Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Pint Cellar. I am Jarvis. So, anyways, I figured maybe this is a good time to do a solo podcast episode this time around, as I want to share my thoughts and opinions on Digital Circus. And, I'm not going to talk about like the latest drama where it's like, oh, the final episode is going to premiere like 2 weeks early in theaters and how fans are reacting to it, how somewhat toxic the community can be about it, and this whole thing going around. I'm not really interested in that, as I do want to give my thoughts and opinions on this short I did a while back where me and Hubrecht share our thoughts on Harlan Ellison and if he would have sued Digital Circus, or more like, I was sharing my thoughts that Harlan Ellison would have tried suing Digital Circus because of how he is. And Hubrecht is not so much into Digital Circus as I am. So, this is a perfect good time for me to share my thoughts about this whole thing or about the whole thing. So, anyways, let's get right into it. So, context. I did a short in which I said that because of how Harlan Ellison was very sue happy, I think he would have tried bringing Digital Circus and Glitch Productions to court if he was still around when the show aired. And people in the comments were sharing their thoughts on the whole thing, where they were arranged from, yeah, he would have tried suing them. And because he did sue people like the film of Terminator, because he claimed that it was copying off of his short story. And like we said, he was very sue happy in life. And there were cases where he was in the right for suing people. But at the same time, too, people admit that Ellison just likes to cause trouble because he thought he could. So, not that I think Digital Circus was a ripoff of his short story, I Have No Mouth, I Must Scream. It's certainly inspired by it. You can tell it had some influence from that short story to make this new show, but to call it a one-for-one mere reflection, copycat, that's not correct at all. Because in my case, or what I want to say, if that's the case, then J.R. Tolkien, if he was immoral, would have sued like almost everyone that tried writing like fantasy literature, like Dungeons and Dragons, George R. Martin, Warhammer, definitely Warhammer, and just because on the claim that just because there's influence or inspiration from his works, he has the right to sue. You can't copy anything off of Tolkien or have any sort of homework inspiration from Tolkien. That wouldn't work at all, I think, or that's not something that would have much weight in court, which I think will have been the same thing for Digital Circus. But because of how long and arduous something like copyright laws can be and how the court system can be, I imagine that Glitch Productions would try to do something like, okay, fine, we'll mention you in the credits of Digital Circus as being an inspiration for this works. Would that be fine to help you drop the lawsuit? And I think Ellison would have done something like, I want you to say I'm the creator, not Gooseworks, because I created Digital Circus, you did not. Because I imagine it would be something like that. It went for the same thing with Terminator. He was like, no, you ripped off of my short story, so I want you to say in big letters at the end of the credits that basically I created Terminator. Or it didn't say that word for word. It was in a Simpsons parody, where Ellison, who played himself, was like, I basically wrote Terminator. And James Cameron was like, in a commentary, was like, I think Ellison just wanted to bring us to court because he thought he could get money out of us, or because he thought he could cause trouble for us, which, admittedly, yeah, that's what Ellison did in his times. Like, he caused fights and conventions. He was very a confrontational person. And I guess that's just what happens when you're bipolar, diagnosed as bipolar. So, yeah, there's no other way around it. It's like people in the comments in that short were like, yeah, Ellison would have tried suing Digital Circus, and because he sued people for much less, he would have ravaged on the show. And if he didn't win in court, or even if he got his name as the creator of Digital Circus, I think he would still like talk crap on it, being like, oh, you see, yeah, I wrote the show, but they just wrote a bastardized version of I Have No Mouth. I'm not trying to talk down at him, but it's just a funny situation to think about where he would have done these things. And I even read this one comment where he would have like maybe caused fistfights for the voice actors when going to these conventions. And you know what? Yeah, that sounds like him. But anyway, so what's the point on this? Well, maybe besides a point where it's me sharing my thoughts on the whole debate from those comments, where it's like, yeah, Ellison would have maybe tried suing them, and he might have would have like caused so much trouble for Glitch Productions over what he might claim to be a ripoff of his short story. And videos on YouTube in which they compare each character to each other character from I Have No Mouth, that probably wouldn't help. And maybe that could give him, weight in courts to try to sue Glitch. It's a funny situation to think of. He's been dead. It doesn't matter. Yeah, but it's just a funny scenario to think about where it's like, yeah, he might have done these things. It's just because of how he is, But what does this mean? Do I think something like Digital Circus is a ripoff of I Have No Mouth? Well, no, it's certainly its own thing, and it's its own thing. Yeah, it certainly wears the inspiration of I Have No Mouth because of the characters and what Kane is, comparing him to Am. But like I said, 1-for-1 reflection of each other. No. Does it have inspiration? Yes. But does it carry its own weight to be its own thing? Well, certainly yes. Because that sort of thing exists for stuff like Game of Thrones with this inspiration from J.R. Tolkien. And definitely for something like Warhammer from what it carries its inspiration from. But, with Digital Circus coming to a close soon, and with the season final coming very soon too, it is something interesting to, just look back on with something like how big something Digital Circus had became and the sort of like legacy it's going to leave behind, because I really liked this show. I'm looking forward to the season final. And it is fun to look back on with some of the people like Harlan Ellison, his works, where it's like, it is very inspirational from I Have No Mouth. And because there's inspiration, he might have tried suing them, because people who really do like Ellison are like, yeah, he would have tried suing them. Not because it's a ripoff, but because that's how he is. But, at the end, I want to hear your thoughts on this whole discussion. Like, do you think Harlan Ellison would have tried suing Digital Circus? Or what do you think he would have, thought of the show if he were still alive to see its, run on the internet, so to say? But yeah, share your thoughts in the comments down below. I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about this whole debate. And with that, I'll see you guys around.